Have you ever wondered how to create a tiny aquascape with a big impact? Today, I'm going to reveal my best kept aquascaping secrets that make a big impact in a tiny space. Secret number one is why tank sizes actually matter. Now, in a nanoscape, anything from 5 to 10 to 20 gallons is going to be your sweet spot. Everything under there is overly complex. I just set one up, but they're a lot of fun. But for you beginning in the nanoscape, I highly recommend a 5 to 10, if you can fit it in there, a 20-gallon tank as well. Now, what I like to do is get a boxed dimension, not over elongated unless it's in the 20-gallon range. I've had some 6-gallon longs. I have one right down here. They're just harder to scape from a length dimensional positioning in comparison to what we think and how our minds work. A box kind of environment and scape is a lot easier to go through and actually scape out. You also have to think of the type of aquarium. I prefer the rimless tanks here. They look more seamless. They offer a lot more aesthetics, but you can get a non-rimless tank as well. They're more affordable, I'll tell you that. And they're great to get into the hobby. So that's secret number one. If you're moving more to more aesthetically pleasing tanks, I prefer rimless tanks. Definitely recommend that if you do have the budget in starting out. The best part about it is all of your lights fit. They're all meant for rimless tanks, majority of them. Things like an automatic fish feeder, you can get lids for them, the lights, everything in my perspective, rimless tanks are the best. But if you're looking for budget friendly, do a non-rimless tank. Next, we're gonna break down is the hardscape. So what you don't wanna go through and do is go out to the store and buy the largest piece of rock. You have to think of a sense of scale. Nanoscapes are small, confined areas, and you have to get hardscape that actually fits in that specific scape. Now, I'll always go through and grab from UNS, because that's the tanks that I get that are rimless, the top that comes with it, and pre-scape it. But you have to have a sense of scale, right? So you're gonna get some type of hardscape that actually fits in that aquarium that doesn't overpower the aquarium. You don't want it to be so much in the foreground that it's taking up all the space in that aquarium. It has to be small enough to make an impact, but not big enough where it makes it seem like it's the whole part of the tank itself. I just set up an aquarium right here as well that does exactly that. You have this lovely piece of stone here that doesn't overpower the overall tank, but it keeps that, again, sense of scale, making it seem larger than it actually is. Because if you get too large of rock or hardscape or wood, it's gonna seem like it's too overpowering and it makes that tank seem smaller versus you creating that small tank and making it seem larger. The next one, which was hard for me to figure out, secret number 3, is going to be plants. You don't want overpowering plants that are gonna just dominate an aquarium. It's the same thing from a hardscape perspective. You need nano plants. That's what thrives in these aquariums and creates that sense of depth. You're gonna think smaller as you go back to larger, but that large kind of capstone isn't too overpowering in a dimensional perspective for the aquarium itself. Things like anubises, right? You have also mosses. You have different foreground plants like Rotala, sorry, not Rotala, alternative Reneki, the mini genius as well. You have things over here like your buces. These can be in those foreground while you're getting drawn to the back density of the space, which would be more of your rotalas, your blood reds, your stem plants that are creating a sense of depth. If you have something large in the front, it's going to be overpowering. Your eye is going to be immediately drawn to that object, and it's going to take away that sense of space because it's going to seem small and confined. Also, things like Cryptovaria, which I don't have any in this tank anymore. Well, I have one over here, but you're not going to be able to see it. Over here, I have a ton of Cryptovaria. That is my most optimal every single aquarium. This one has one now. I moved it out because of this foreground, but yes, every single one has at least one Cryptovaria in them. Again, they're some of the best nanoscape plants, and if you haven't seen them, check out my most top 5 under 5 minutes, whatever it is, nanoscape plants, and you'll find every single one that I use. Next one's going to be lighting. With such a confined space, you can't have too much lighting. You're going to have huge swings in algae breakouts from a density of light that's just going to make that algae thrive. So I highly recommend, if you do get something that's more higher end lighting, change that light density down. But there's some good brands out there like the Hager brands that are excellent for growing not high density kind of plants or high thriving nutrient dense plants, more the higher end type of plants that you would be required. They're actually going to be more of plants that don't require high densities of light. But the Hager brand is a great brand to start out with. I'm not sponsored by them. I do use it. I have one down here, but I meant in terms of, and one up there. I don't currently have them on my show tanks that you see everything behind me. Most everything is run off the Churros line because the apps for those are just amazing. I like functionality and easeability, so that's why I went with those. But definitely recommend the Hager brand. Another cheaper but higher end kind of mid brand would be your Twin Star lights. I've used those before. Those are great as well, but it just comes down to the type of plants that you're going to add in there. Are they going to thrive off that type of lighting? Now let's move on to secret number 5. One of my favorite ones is the substrate. I'm a plant guy. Typically I love plants. Not typically, I do love plants. So my whole thing of getting into the hobby was bringing nature outside of just potted plants in your home. So the nutrient dense substrate is one of the key factors in your nanoscapes that you want to make a big impact on your plants. You just have to be aware on where you're placing that substrate, because you're going to have to set a sense of scale by creating an upward movement towards the back to create a sense of larger impact. Now what I do for my substrate is a nutrient dense substrate below, then I cap it down so that's not going to be entering into the water column. But again, substrate is key. You can use different types of substrate. I have a sand substrate, and then I use Contro soil from UNS. There's some other brands out there that you can use as well. I have some over there that I don't really use anymore because you have to wash it. But there are other brands out there that you can use. It's a fine bead substrate that works great. It's nutrient dense and it creates aeration because it's not a super solid fine sand that doesn't create aeration from the vertical column, so water column, down into the substrate. But again, substrate is a huge factor into it, and it just depends on what you're looking from aesthetics, but then also what you're looking for from maintaining your water parameters. So again, aqua soil, it could be the UNS Contra soil. That's a great one. That's what I recommend. That's what I use. And then I use a sand substrate. So you just pick pockets and areas that you can plant it. So behind this whole area here is actually Contra soil. You can see some of it poured out over here. It's a bead. But again, that's what I use. And the main reason for nutrient dense substrate below is to provide nutrients to those plants that are not epiphytes, things that are going to feed off of that substrate. And you can do that also if you're using Contra soil. I use that with 2-Hour Aquarius, their root tabs. So those are great root tabs. I usually add their S as their base that has nutrient dense in there as well with some beneficial bacteria. Also the Contra base, I just used it in this new scape that I showed a little bit earlier. Learning new ways of adding more longevity beneficial substrates for nutrients, because root tabs does get annoying over time, adding those every 2 to 3 weeks. Also liquid fertilizers is great as well. Next one is number 6, and this comes back full circle to the tank size, because I used to do this nanoscape longs, and it's hard to find a hang-on back filter that pushes flow through end to end on those longscapes. So I totally pivoted and stopped using longscapes. Things like this cube that I just created again. I love the cubes because you can get a hang-on back filter that pushes flow through the entire tank itself, which is amazing. When you get into the 5-gallon round, you can essentially use a canister filter. Highly recommend it. Flow is very important to filtration and water turnover rate, but also flow in perspective of flowing through the aquarium of water actually prevents algae from establishing in those areas. So if you're seeing a lot of algae, it could be one of two things. It can be your lighting, well, one of three things: nutrients and ammonia spikes. Number three is flow, actually. Flow is a huge issue in your aquariums. If you're not having a high flow rate that actually circulates through the entire aquarium itself, you're gonna have algae breakouts. So if you're noticing large algae breakouts and you tested your light, well, you've changed your light settings and you've tested your water, it's actually because it's stagnant water. So you need better flow in your aquarium. That's why I prefer no longer using long nano tanks, because it's hard to get flow in there. Not something like this that's in your 20-gallon tank, because you can put a canister filter that's going to provide proper flow. But things like the cubes that I just showed you are great because, again, it's not a long span distance, it's confined in one area, and you can get enough proper flow in the entire aquarium itself to make sure you're not having stagnant water anywhere in that aquarium. Number 7 is another reason I got into this hobby, and it is your livestock. What can you put in here? Now, I know a lot of people get into this hobby mainly because of the fish. I got into this hobby because of ornamental shrimp, and I didn't want to create a breeding tank. I know I probably shouldn't say that because you're gonna see some videos come out now that I'm gonna create 2 tanks specifically for breeding to add into my show tanks. But my mentality of creating these tanks here was to go outside of the norm of Caridina shrimp, where you're having a beaded substrate that's nutrient dense, and then just having a filter like a aeration filter. And that's just not what I wanted. It didn't look aesthetically pleasing to me. I want to create these environments that are gorgeous, not one-to-one where they are in nature, but they're also thriving in these natural environments that I've created for them. So ornamental shrimp are great for nanoscapes. There's your Neocaridina line, there's your Caridina line, and you just pick those 2, because when you're going through and picking those two, it's gonna matter of what type of water parameters you're adding, and also hardscape. From a hardscape perspective, you have to be highly conscientious for Caridina shrimp on making sure you're not going to get anything that's going to actually release minerals into the water column. So that's what you call inert hardscape. That's what you want. So just make sure you're aware of that as well. Next one is going to be your fish. Now, I have some favorites. That's all I have in here in all my aquariums, but there's more than that. My favorites are aligned with making sure they're not going to eat the shrimplets, because I love my Caridina and Neocaridina shrimp. So I'm making sure that they're not going to be predatorially eating my shrimplets. So I love, and what I have in here is chili rasboras, and you can see some of them swimming around, but they're mainly in this corner right here. So I have all of these chili rasboras. There's 2 different lines. There's the pygmy chili rasboras, and then your typical chili rasboras, and then there's the pygmy rasboras. Sorry, one has a dot, one has a line. I also love my killifish. So if you can see this guy swimming right here, there's a bunch more in here. I actually just had babies. Then you have things like plecos. I have someone that is here local that I switch out when they get too big, but I just got this recent longfin pleco, and it's gorgeous. So I get these baby plecos, I grow them up for about 6 months. They excel because they're getting water changes. And then I also have my panda loaches. These things are amazing. If you have the opportunity to get some panda loaches, highly recommend getting some panda loaches. They're just amazing to have in your aquarium. And some other fish would be your celestial pearl danios. That's what I have in this tank here as well, with my clown killifish. I said clown killifish earlier, right? That's what I meant to say, additionally to my chili rasboras and pygmy rasboras. And then also, I think that's all I got. Those are the fish that I like. So that's what I have in all my aquariums, and that's what I optimize for in my nanoscapes. Just be aware CPDs do eat shrimplets. So I don't have any Caridina shrimp in here. I have Neocaridina shrimp in here, and they've been fine, but just be aware of that. Just want you all to be clear. CPDs do eat shrimplets. Do they overeat them? No. Some survive. I would say about 60% survive. But just be aware that CPDs are gorgeous and fun to watch as well. So let's go through and highlight some of my tanks. First and foremost, we're going to start with my Caridina tank that is thriving. Now this was a sense of a cave environment, not having a lot of depth, but bringing you interior into the tank, meaning you're being drawn in and coming back full circle with this cove-like mentality. Next is going to be my 20 long, and I created this with the mentality of having it as almost like a water bog with 3 different main focal points that you have, with each branch flowing into those as well. There's also a peace lily that hangs out in the back left corner that gives you an additional interior, in aquascape to exterior flow to the outside of it. So I really love how this tank turned out, and everything in here is thriving. My next nano tank is another 10-gallon tank. This thing has been thriving for the last 2 months. This tank was thought of from, again, another Caridina breeding tank, having this aqua soil that reduces that pH, but a nice sand bound area that brings you back to what I call Kona. There will be a build video coming out soon of this one. This is another prize show tank that I'm excited to show everybody when it's actually the build video, but you all get a sneak peek for watching this all the way to here. And then also you'll get a build video of this newest one that I created. It's actually breaking my rule of thumb. It is a 4-gallon tank. The reason why I created this was to get my Thai crabs into a new environment with fresh, better water flow from the long aquarium that I had them in. And this scape was fun to scape. I actually, ironically enough, as you're watching and looking at this aquarium, I just scaped it about an hour ago. And that's it. So far, I mean, I also have the 20-gallon that's behind me. This tank has been running for almost about a year and a couple months. This one, and the thought process of it was having something centric around the center that draws you in from the back, left and right, with a nice little cove entrance from the wood itself. And this is meant for Neo-Caridina tanks. Everything else you saw was all Caridina line except for the Thai crab tank. That has the same water parameters as my Neo-Caridina. But this has the celestial pearl danios. I love watching them in here, as well as my clown killifish. I'm going to start adding those in all of my tanks because they're breeding really heavily in my 20 long. They really like the peace lily that is planted in the corner, and that's where they hang out and breed and have their little baby fish that I've been seeing and enjoying. So those are my 7 secrets on how you can create a stunning small nanoscape in what I've done and what I've learned. Now, I would love to know, what was your favorite tip throughout this whole video? Please leave it in the comments. Take this moment to like as well. And please check out one of my latest videos right here. And until next time, I'll see you all on a couple build videos that I'm starting to edit and give you all as well.